नमस्कार। मैं
रंजीता मैम
हाँ जी सर।
स्टार्ट करा दीजिए। सर जुड़ गए क्या?
हाँ हाँ
रंजीता मैम
हाँ जी सर।
स्टार्ट करा दीजिए।
A very good afternoon to all of you. Sir, I welcome you on behalf
हेलो
of.
नमस्कार सर।
नमस्कार नमस्कार।
Sir, I welcome you on behalf of HRDC
sir.
BPS Women University.
अमरपाल सर मेरी आवाज आ रही है?
हाँ जी सर, आ रही है आपकी आवाज।
हेलो
आ रही है सर, आ रही है।
नमस्कार नमस्कार भूपेंद्र जी।
हेलो हेलो
हाँ
आ रही है सर।
सर हमें तो आ रही है, मुझे लग रहा है सर को हमारी नहीं आ रही।
हेलो
कोई नहीं मैम, आप कंटिन्यू करिए।
ओके। On behalf, sir, I welcome you on behalf of HRDC BPS Women University and Dr. Shefali Nagpal, Director, and
Hello.
Dr. Bhupender Singh, sir, and all participants. A very warm welcome you, sir,
जी,
once again.
थैंक यू।
Our today's speaker is BC Sapta. I pronounce right, sir?
डॉक्टर साबत, डॉक्टर बीसी साबत।
Dr. BC Sabat, and education and professional qualifications, MBA in disaster management, PhD in botany, LLB, MPhil, MSc, BSc, मतलब वो तो सब है ही, और सर की PhD botany में है। And there are some positions which were held by him. Some of them are Mahatma Gandhi Institute of Combating Climate Change, Alipur, and Department of Environment, Government of NCT of Delhi. And there are a lot of positions which were held. And there are a lot of number of fields. Contribution in the field of science and environment. Some of them are like providing inputs for state level strategy and policy development, for state level strategy and policy development for betterment of environment of NCT of Delhi, and providing financial support in the form of grant to the eco clubs and NGOs. There are a lot of fields. Some of them important, like organizing environment campaign like Say No to Crackers, Green and Clean Delhi, Say No to Plastic Bag, Conservation of Water and Electricity, Khelo Holi Naturally, etc. Among the children of Delhi, write messages on environment and eco club students. And he has published one book, and there are 25 papers published by him in national and international journals, and awards which were received by him. UNESCO Young Scientist Visiting Award in 1989, Biotechnology National Associateship Award in 1995-96 by Department of Biotechnology, Government of India, and Bhagidari Award for Best Officer in 2005 and 6 and 7. And बहुत सारी जगह सर मेंबर रहे हैं, like Constitution of Committee to Review the Science and Technology Communication Programs and Science Schemes of National Council for Science and Technology Communications, Department of Science and Technology.
सर मेरी आवाज नहीं आ रही?
7 December.
हेलो आ रही है सर?
आ रही है सर आपकी आवाज?
आ रही है सर आपकी
आवाज।
हाँ जी सर,
आ रही है।
हेलो भूपेंद्र सर।
हाँ जी, मेरी आवाज आ रही है?
मुझे लग रहा है हमारी सर को नहीं, मैसेज कर देते हैं सर को। हाँ जी सर, आपकी आवाज तो हमें आ रही है।
आपकी भी आ गई अभी।
कोई नहीं रंजीता मैम, आप कंटिन्यू करिए।
सर का PhD thesis है aquatic pollution of river Hooghly, and title of book is River Pollution in India, a case study for river Ganga. आशीष पब्लिकेशन में है। और a very warm welcome again you sir. I invite you to deliver your lecture.
Thank you, ma'am, for introducing myself, and thank you, Dr. Bhupender, for inviting for this talk. Good afternoon to all the
नमस्कार सर।
teachers and all the. नमस्कार नमस्कार।
कैसे हैं सर? हमारे यहाँ नेटवर्क में प्रॉब्लम हो रही है कोई सर?
कोई नहीं, अभी सब ठीक ठाक है। अभी हम शुरू कर रहे हैं, नो प्रॉब्लम।
ठीक है सर।
ठीक है, ठीक है। तो सभी पार्टिसिपेंट्स को मेरा नमस्कार। एंड आज का जो विषय, टुडे जो सब्जेक्ट व्हाट वी आर गोइंग टू present is environment and disaster management. I came to know that all of you are attending the program, particularly in the disaster management and environment field. So let me congratulate all of you for being presenting and being attending this course. And hopefully we will try to do something on this environment and disaster management. If you feel any time to ask something or two, then you are very free to ask me. So next slide, sir. Environment issues. We will discuss about the various environment issues. If you see, that is in solid waste management, sewage treatment, air pollution, water pollution, industrial revolution, and soil erosion. If you see the history of environment issues, environment is a subject which earlier was not very much talk about. And now, if you see in all over the world, the environment issues is one of the very, very vigilant issue, and everybody talking about that. Why it is happens? Because unless until our environment is not good, we are not able to survive. That's why the lot of environmental challenges facing this world, and being the environmental problems, we follow the disasters. There are a lot of disasters happen due to the environmental issues. And today we'll discuss about how these environmental issues are very important for the disaster management. And if you see the solid waste management, recently we have seen how big issue was there on the waste management side in Delhi because of the lot of the garbage. It was coming to make a mountain of the garbage, and people were talking about that. So that was the major issue in the recent election, and people were thought of this. So because of the solid स्लाइड आप शो करा दीजिए सर, वहीं से करा दीजिएगा। आपका सेकंड, आपके पास है स्लाइड ना सर? थोड़ा स्लाइड शो करा दीजिएगा।
करा रहा हूँ सर, करा रहा हूँ।
स्लाइड शो कर दीजिएगा। आ रहा है स्लाइड सर? अभी बीच में आया था स्लाइड सर, दोबारा चला लीजिएगा। नेक्स्ट स्लाइड कर दीजिए सर। बस बस दिस वन। तो इसमें आप देख लीजिएगा व्हाट इज सॉलिड वेस्ट मैनेजमेंट, सीवेज ट्रीटमेंट, एयर पोल्यूशन, वाटर पोल्यूशन, इंडस्ट्रियल रिवोल्यूशन एंड सॉइल इरोजन. These are basic issues of the environmental present issues, and they are leading for the disaster. Anything happens to this because of the mountainous heaps of the solid waste management, lot of problems were happened, and you might be knowing there are few casualties were there because of the mountainous problem of the solid waste management. The sewage treatment plant, lot of workers every year they are going to die because of the problem of the sewage treatment. Unless until we have a scientific sewage treatment, I think that is a very much problem in our place. Air pollution, as you know, Delhi, always you are hearing the pollution problem in Delhi. Air pollution is a major cause of hazard of the health, as well as other issues are there. Water pollution, all the rivers are, you see the same problem. The water pollution is a big problem. And industrial revolution. Because of the industrial revolution, a lot of disasters like chemical disaster, hazardous disaster, these are all coming because of the industrial revolution. And soil erosion also is a part of problem. You might be seeing in Uttarakhand, then our other hill states, where a lot of problems are happening because of the solution. Next slide, sir. So if you see the disaster management, there are 3 or 4 things like your recurring drought. This is one of the problem in disasters, urban floods, eroding natural resources, and forest biodiversity loss. These are some of the problems of the disaster management. If you see the drought, every time we are getting a drought in once maybe in some other parts of the world. In India also we are having a lot of problem of the recurring drought. Then urban floods, you might be hearing the big Mumbai flood, what is a very biggest example of the urban flood. Then eroding natural resources also you might be seeing lot of natural resources has been lost and forest biodiversity lost. This is also a big threat to our nation. Next slide, sir. If you see what is a disaster management, according to WHO, a disaster can be defined as any occurrence that causes damage, ecological disruption, loss of human life, deterioration of health and health services on a scale sufficient to warrant an extraordinary response from outside that affected community or area. Majorly, if you see the disaster, what is a disaster means a loss or something damage, something disruption. And because of that, a loss of human life is there. And another, as per the American Red Cross, a disaster can be defined as an occurrence either nature or man-made that causes human suffering and creates human needs that victim cannot alleviate without assistance. Like if you take an example of a flood, if someone is in the river, midst of river, unless until somebody helps, he cannot do anything. So that's why the disaster is always a human-centric. Next, sir. How a disaster management can be done. First one is the preparedness. Activity prior to disaster. You know, the what you call say, prevention is the better than cure. Like in disaster management, preparedness is one of the major things. And we have to prepare ourselves. Like the activity prior to disaster, like the preparedness plans, emergency exercises, training, warning system, etc. This is the one of the awareness program organized by UGC for you. So preparedness is one of the best example for the disaster management. Next comes as a response, activity during disaster. Suppose something happened, how we can reach quickly, that we call as in our disaster word, golden hour or peacock hour, like public warning system. Something, if there is something coming flood, so public warning system, emergency operation, search and rescue. If there is an earthquake comes, we have to make the search and rescue. Then comes the recovery. How to recover after disaster? Activity following a disaster, that is temporary housing, claims, long-term medical plan, care and counseling. Once you are having a problem like disaster, how you can recover that? That was the recovery plan. Then mitigation plan. So mitigation means activities that reduce the effect of disaster, building code, zoning, vulnerability analysis, public education. These are a lot of things are happening in the disaster management case, and mitigation is the majority after it happens. So there are 4 types like preparedness, response, recovery, and mitigation plan. Next, sir. What it involves and why it happens? Dealing with the avoiding both man and man natural disaster. There are 2. One is a natural disaster like your flood, drought, volcano eruption. These are called the natural disaster. But some of the things are there, both man-made. But means if you can think something or you can prepare, maybe we can avoid both man and both natural disaster. Preparedness before disaster. This is very, very important. How to prepare yourself to combat or to face a disaster. Then rebuilding and supporting society after natural disaster. This is a major issue, and whole the world people now trained to help others if something happens. Next one. If you see the background of the problem, how it happens, that is the enormous population pressure and urbanization. Throughout the world, if you see, our population increases and urbanization increases. There was a time when people lives in villages. Now every villager coming to the urban, and there is a lot need for the housing. A flood, a drought, or an earthquake, millions of people are affected each time a disaster occurs. Something happens, there are a lot of problem happens in the, if you see in the recent Philippines and even the Indonesia, once something happens on this disaster, a lot of people affected. Large scale displacement of the loss of life, loss of property, and agricultural crop. Not only the loss of your life, loss of property and agricultural crops also there. An increase in extent of encroachment in plains, that is riverbeds, drainage, of course, low-lying areas, ponds, waterways, etc. If you see the cities today, not a single place is left. Even they encroach the ponds and build houses there. Even the riverbed, drainage, where there is drainage, of course, now there is no drainage there. Low-lying areas, everything has been filled up for the human life or the human settlement. This is a major issue in big cities, that they are all, because a city or a town has been designed so that the water system, sewerage system should be proper. But if you see our towns nowadays, they are not properly designed, and everything has been enclosed upon. Earlier, if you see in the case of Delhi, we have 1,100 ponds or lakes in Delhi as per the record. Now even 100 or 150 ponds are available, and rest are totally encroached and buildings coming up there. Likewise, many cities, if you see the Bhopal, the lake city we say, but many of the lakes has been encouraged. Likewise, many Mumbai and city Bangalore, you might be the recent flood in Bangalore, how the ponds has been totally disappeared, and because of that, the total Bangalore city was flooded. So like many cities or many towns have an example of the same thing. Next one. So what is, how many types of disaster is there? There is one is natural disaster. As I told you, the natural disaster is mainly drought, flood, and how it occurs in the nature. Then meteorological. Meteorological means something happens due to heavy rain. Topographical. Once the topographical changes, there is also disaster comes. Environmental, as I told, the chemical, hazardous, environmental problems, air pollution, water pollution, that also causes disaster. Man-made disaster. Man-made disaster like your all terrorism act. This is a disaster. And even the explosion, somewhere, bombing, these are all man-made disaster. Technological, there is something error in technology, then all disaster happens. Industrial accident, that is also a problem in where if you see the industrial activity or industrial accidents occur, then also disaster happens. And security related, as I told you, this is a big threat to human life, particularly in the present days. If you see, lot of things happening due to security related issues. If something happens and that is a disaster happens, and lot of problems will be taken. Next one. If you see the factors affecting our disaster, host factor, there are already a factor. Age means evolution, immunization status, degree of mobility, emotional stability. If you take example of your cholera or the Hija or the plague or maybe in your polio, if there is not a immunization not there, there is a lot of things happens earlier. And that was the age, what we call the host factors, and earlier days it was happened. Environmental factors. Many times, if you see, if your environment factors also response for the disasters. Physical factor, chemical factor, biological factor, even social factor, or the psychological factor. All these factors affect the disaster. During the disaster, even after the disaster, these facts happening. Then next comes, next one, sir. Phases of disaster. How disaster happens? As I told you earlier, pre-impact phase or disaster preparedness phase. Until unless we prepare ours, like the air, and everything is in place. The new company, if you see industry, there is a safety measures are taken place. Even the buildings are the fire measures have been taken up. So pre-impact phase or disaster phase, disaster preparedness is one of the first phase. Then impact phase or a disaster impact. Suppose something happens in a disaster, that is called disaster impact. In the impact of something, disaster happens. Then disaster response. Once there is a disaster response, quick response is required, and that is called the disaster response. Post-impact phase or rehabilitation. Once a disaster happens, how to rehabilitate them and how to reach them, that was the rehabilitation phase. And next one is the disaster mitigation. Disaster mitigation is majorly how to mitigate the disaster plan, or maybe you can think that how this total disaster phase can be avoided. Next one. Principles of disaster management. What is the principles? Disaster management is the responsibility of all spheres of government. This is not only one government or other government or maybe a section of government. It is not a role. All people has to be responsible for this disaster management. Disaster management should use resources that exist for a day-to-day purpose. Sometimes what happens, if something happens, people hoard their resources and they are not likely to share the others. That should not be there. Once there is a disaster, all resources should be for everyone and every day it should be there. Organizations should function as an extension of their core business. It should not be only say that this is not my job, that is not my job. So once disaster happens, everybody has to work collectively. Individuals are responsible for their own safety. This is a major thing in disaster. We have to take care of ourselves. Sometimes it happens that if you are carelessly going in a road, maybe you are having a accident. Likewise, the individuals have to responsible for, and you have to be learned how to exit the area during an earthquake, how to swim in a cyclone area, how to live in that area. So everybody, every individual should have a knowledge how to go about or how to know about the disasters. Disaster planning should focus on large scale event. It is not that only one city or one village or one panchayat taken care of, but whole country as a whole should have a disaster management plan, and they have to be think about how to take the safety as well as if something happens, how we will take care of that. Disaster management planning must take account of the types of physical environment and structure of the population. It should be planning in a such a way depending upon the population, depending upon the environmental factor, and depending upon the feasibility. Disaster planning must recognize the involvement of all sections of society, including government, NGOs, and community. It is not that only one section can be utilized. Everybody should work together. The government organization, volunteer organization, as well as the community. Here I emphasize that the community has a big response. Nowadays, what happens, the community thinks it is the duty of a government, and everybody thinks government can do something, but government can't do everything unless until the community prepared. So community preparation, community preparedness is a major issue in the disaster management. Next one, if you see what are the agencies working with disaster. Indian Meteorology Department is one of the major key factors. They are forecast about the cyclone storm by detecting and tracing. So there are a lot of models available throughout the world. So until we are getting our government data, with the data from USA, Japan, because now the during this IT age, every whole world is in one family. We can know whatever happening in USA or Japan, and immediately we are getting the thing. So IMD is one of the major factor, and they play a key role in assessing or detecting and tracing the cyclone areas or storm areas. The international agencies which provide humanitarian assistance to disaster strike areas, they are called the United Nation agencies, like the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, OCHA, World Health Organization, UNICEF, World Food Program, FAO. All these are the UN bodies, and they meant for the well-being of the population of the whole world. Suppose it is not that only one place it is happening, they are going, they all over the world they are there, and if something happens in some place or maybe some other place, they are going and they are helping to others. Next one. Then NGOs, these are the voluntary organization is very much there, and they always do the help to for the disasters. Then cooperative American relief everywhere. That is called the CARE, and CARE is one of the beautiful organization when they always help when there is a need during disaster. International Committee on Red Cross, Indian Red Cross, they're all trained and they make the preparedness for others also during the disaster. Major disasters in India, if you see the major disaster, this is one 1984 Bhopal gas tragedy. It is an environmental problem, and isomethylene, you see the gas, toxic gas, MIC, that was methyl isocyanide, is causing a huge number of deaths, and the people still remember how big it was. Then 99 super cyclone in Odisha, Andhra Pradesh, West Bengal, thousands of people has been died. 2001 Gujarat earthquake, you see whole Gujarat area, lot of areas were destroyed and people were died. 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami in the Madras coast, it was happened. Then 2008 it is Mumbai attack, that is the 26/11 man-made, that is called the man-made disaster happens. And this is 2020 COVID-19 pandemic. Everybody know, whole world know about the pandemic COVID. So this is a one type of disaster, and this is, you can't say man-made or maybe natural, but it's both. People say it is man-made on this. So India's vulnerability to disasters. If you see our country particularly, 57% land is vulnerable to earthquake. The whole northeast belt and northern India, Himalayan region, is totally earthquake prone, and 12% is severe earthquake prone. If you see our Delhi and Himalayan belt, that is always a earthquake prone zone, and it is said Delhi is a vulnerable area, anytime it can come. Then 68% of land is vulnerable to drought. Many places, if you see Rajasthan, Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, Himachal Pradesh, many a times we are having drought. So drought is also a type of disaster where you are finding the people, lot of people, they are even not able to get the food during the drought. 12% land is vulnerable to flood. All the coastal country states like Odisha, West Bengal, Andhra Pradesh, Chennai, all rest they are in a flood. Every year, if you see, there will be a flood in somewhere else, and all the people they were doing on these things. Apart from the natural disasters, some cities in India are also vulnerable to chemical, industrial, and man-made disaster. Like those cities have big industrial estate, there is always a threat to chemical disasters. Even the industrial disaster, where the industries were there, something happens. Sometimes there is a bursting of the coal, boilers, bursting up some of the things, accidents, incidents, it happen. And always we are hearing a disaster in somewhere, some towns in industrial or, and the man-made disaster, as I told you, there is a lot of terrorism, sometimes it is accident, sometimes it is a problem which is a man-made disaster, and anytime it happens, we are seeing in our country. So national agencies for disaster management, the country has a now big government set up, and if you see the floods, the Ministry of Water Research is responsible, cyclone, Indian Meteorological Department, earthquake, IMD, because why this has been designated? If something happens, the quick response is from their departments. It is not that only they will deal, but the whole government of India, state government, they are doing. But they are the major role they do on these things. If there is an epidemic, the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, like during the COVID, Health Department was a major stakeholder. Then everyone flew. Ministry of Health, Ministry of Environment, Agriculture, and Animal Husbandry. If you see the lump disease is there for the animals in Madhya Pradesh. So this is a type of disaster also. So the Animal Husbandry Department is looking after on that. There is a chemical disaster, Ministry of Environment and Forest. They are looking after chemicals, a lot of chemicals, hazardous and toxic, and any time they can have a problem for our people, for our laborers, and other things. Then air accident. There is a lot of accidents happens in aerospace and the flights and other things. So the Ministry of Civil Aviation is looking after the same. Then fire. If you see the fire, Ministry of Home and Fire Department is there. Every state has a fire department. They are under the State Home Department. And if there is a nuclear incident, Department of Atomic Energy is responsible. And you are seeing the recent Russia and the war, there is a talk of the atomic energy, and many people, they are already died due to the war. So that is a man-made disaster. It happens everywhere. Then you are seeing the nuclear bombing in Japan earlier. We have seen how the World War, lot of people have died because of the disaster. The mine accident, the Department of Mine is looking after, like coal mines, bauxite mines. Thousands of workers are working on that places, and they are responsible for that because the Department of Mine has a lot of mines under them, and if something happens to them, they look after these things. So if you see the new direction for disaster management in India, the government of India has set up the National Disaster Management Authority, that is called NDMA, which is set up as the apex body for disaster management in India, which is the Prime Minister as chairman. And there is a lot of members and other things are there, which will be a quick response for that. Then Disaster Management Authority also set up in all the states as well as district level, headed by CM and district collector. So disaster management is taken as a very, very serious subject nowadays. Every state, every district has to have a disaster management authority. National Disaster Mitigation Fund under NDMA. If something happens, if suppose somebody, some disaster happens in somewhere, so there is a disaster mitigation fund under the NDMA, and there is a necessary disaster response fund. So anything immediate to do, so that is called a response fund, and there is a National Disaster Response Force, NDRF. You might be seeing two platoons of NDRF has gone to somewhere to do these things. If there is a fire, if there is a flood, if there is drought, if there is something, a man-made accident, so always NDRF people are running to the place, and Government of India has a NDRF in many places of the country. There are many cities, they have the NDRF present, and they look after the program on this. So what are the lessons we learned? If you see the previous disasters, if you see the lessons, be prepared, and preparedness and mitigation is bound to yield more effective returns than distributing relief after disaster. What happens, what we do, if there is a flood, there is a cyclone, we go and distribute the reliefs. Reliefs is okay, but if you are having a preparedness and mitigation plan, I think there are some relief for the disaster. Create a culture of preparedness and prevention. So this is very, very important. We have to be very careful, and we should create a culture how to ready, how to prepare ourselves, and how to make a preparedness plan and prevention, and to prevent how we can prevent that one. Then even a code of conduct for all stakeholders. Like if you see, now there is a CBSE has started the school disaster management plan. Everything is there, but we are not practicing that. Something happens, then everybody talk about the preparedness, everybody talk about the planning, But in general, if everything going smooth, nobody think about how to make the preparedness plan. Like every school, if you see in the country, there are lakhs of schools are there. How many schools are disaster preparedness plan? Though it is in the book or in the law, but I think many people never follow that. Even our colleges, universities, our hospitals, our offices, everybody should have a exit plan or emergency plan. If something happens, how it happens. In other countries, like if you go to Japan, they have a very good preparedness plan. If something happens, and every 15 days or 20 days, they run mock drills, like the mock drill, how to prevent and how to prepare. So our country, though we are still, everything is there, but preparedness is very much less till now. The Disaster Reduction Day, NIDM, National Institute of Disaster Management, they observe a Disaster Reduction Day on 12th October. They rallies, special lectures were organized in the schools, colleges, universities to empower the youth. Booklet on disaster management plan is already available, and the preparedness distribution to children they are doing. But if you see the NIDM reduction day, disaster reduction day, the whole country they should take part on these things. And I argue all the teachers, those are attended, maybe they can take the note, and it is already there in the NIDM and in NDMA website, that is small booklets available. They can go to their respective schools and colleges and distribute the children, distribute the students, so that students can prepare themselves how to prepare a disaster, how to face a disaster. That is the major challenge. Rather than knowing the disaster, how beautiful or how much you ever about the disaster and how you prepare. That is the major objective of the Disaster Reduction Day. And that day, many programs were taken up in the country and in other places that they are doing, and they are observing that day. Rally means, the fire department, meteorology department, they organize the lot of programs for students and other places, that they organize the same people how to make ever on disaster and how to prepare themselves. That is the major issue on this Disaster Reduction Day. And I hope all your colleges, universities, they follow the rule and they do something for the children, for the students to make ever and these things. And lastly, I thank all of you that you should prepare yourself to disasters and how to make ourselves ready for the face the disaster. So thank you very much. And if you have any question, we will take up the questions on this. Madam, anybody has any question so that we can take up the questions?
Ask your questions.
Or any suggestion, not only questions, if anybody has any suggestion, we can take up on that.
हेलो किसी के कोई क्वेश्चन हो सर से पूछने के लिए?
कोई सजेशन भी हो तो वो भी हम ले सकते हैं सर, उनसे, टीचर से.
सर इको क्लब के लिए यूनिवर्सिटी के अंदर, जैसे कॉलेजेस के अंदर तो ग्रांट होती है, यूनिवर्सिटीज के अंदर भी जैसे इको क्लब वगैरह है, तो उनके लिए बनाती हैं तो ग्रांट वगैरह मिलती है?
हाँ, उनके लिए आपको ये डिसास्टर वाले भी देते हैं ग्रांट. इनका भी एक डिसास्टर क्लब करके आजकल यूनिवर्सिटी में, कॉलेज में